Madam Speaker, I rise to speak to the electricity market reform bills before us. And I want to be clear from the outset, I'm not objecting to the content of these bills. The technical reforms proposed are largely sound, and the creation of a more coordinated planning framework through the Regulated Electricity System and Investment Plan, the RESIP, has real potential to improve how we invest in the Territory's energy future. But that's precisely my point, that this is an opportunity, a significant one, to set the direction for our electricity system for decades to come. We heard yesterday about the extreme pressure and stress that our electricity system is under and the threat that that puts all Territorians to. When we have that kind of opportunity in front of us, we need to make sure that we're using it to its full potential. So the issue is not what's in the bills, the issue is what's been dropped from them, namely, strangely, any clear commitment to renewable energy as part of the Territory's future electricity system. That's not a fatal flaw in the legislation itself, but it is a missed opportunity. And in the context of where the Territory is heading economically, environmentally, and in terms of livability, it's an opportunity we can't afford to miss. This isn't about opposing reform, it's about making sure that the reform we're undertaking actually sets us up for success. The RESIP framework gives us a chance to plan strategically, to coordinate investment and to think long-term about what our electricity system needs to deliver. So this is an opportunity for us to use it properly. Let's make sure that when we're building this new planning framework, we're building it with clear goals, goals that reflect not just market efficiency, but the Territory's actual needs. Affordable power, reliable supply, and a system that can withstand the climate challenges that we are already facing. So the technical structure this bill creates is good, but structure without direction is not enough. We need to know where we're going, and we need to make sure that where we're going is somewhere worth getting to. Let me start briefly with the legislation. As we know, these bills allow for the creation of a new electricity planning process, the RESIP. This plan will guide decisions on how electricity generation is procured in the Territory with an oversight from the Northern Territory Electricity System and Market Operator and a new planning and investment review panel. That structure itself is no cause for alarm. It centralises planning and could potentially bring more coordination in how we invest in generation, in storage and in transmission. But there is one critical omission. Nowhere in the stated objectives of the RESIP is a commitment to growing renewable energy generation. That's not a minor oversight. The original reform papers from 2020 and 2024 made it clear that expanding renewables was a clear goal. The updated legislation has removed that principle, quietly but completely. In a jurisdiction like the Northern Territory, with abundant solar resources, high electricity prices and pressing climate risks, the failure to explicitly support renewables is not just short-sighted, it's a deliberate prioritisation of gas industry at the expense of present and future livelihoods across the Northern Territory. The central procurement model being proposed means that future generation projects will need to apply to participate in the market, and without clear policy direction, it's likely that investment decisions will be made on the basis of short-term commercial returns, not long-term environmental or community outcomes. So while these bills themselves don't dismantle existing policy, they do point the system away from a renewables-led transition and towards a model where the market, rather than policy, decides what kind of electricity we want here in the Northern Territory. And in a market still dominated by gas infrastructure, that means we risk locking ourselves into the status quo rather than taking the opportunity to build something better. This is where the opportunity lies. We could use this legislation to send a clear signal that the Territory is serious about renewable energy, that we're planning for it and that we're creating a framework that actively supports it. Madam Speaker, to understand why renewables matter, we need to step back and look at this in a broader context, because obviously energy policy is not in a vacuum. The Northern Territory is already on the front line of climate change, and we are one of the regions least equipped to deal with it. Madam Speaker, let me be absolutely clear. Renewable energy isn't optional for the Northern Territory's future, it's essential. And the longer we treat it as something we'll get to eventually, the harder and more expensive this transition becomes. As I said in our last sitting, anthropogenic or human-caused global heating is happening now. It's not a problem for some future generation. It's impacting on our people here in the Northern Territory. It's impacting on our economy and it's impacting on our environment. Across the Territory, we're already seeing the evidence: rising temperatures, longer and more intense heat waves, prolonged droughts, sea level rise, more destructive cyclones, unpredictable flooding, the spread of tropical disease, and shrinking habitats for our plants and animals. These aren't just weather events, Madam Speaker. They are life and death matters. People die in heat waves, particularly when we're talking about extreme heat and humidity here in the Northern Territory. As climate change intensifies, we risk more people dying from heat-related illness. These are preventable deaths if we act urgently to prevent future climate change. And let me emphasise again, we're not talking about distant projections. These are real conditions happening now and they'll only intensify. When we talk about 1 or 2 degrees of warming, we're talking about the average change across the country. And in climates like ours, in tropical and equatorial climates in the Northern Territory, we experience the extremes of that range. Temperatures in climates like ours are already pushing the limits of human adaptation and livability. Madam Speaker, the reality is that we will not be able to live here. But, Madam Speaker, this is not, the effects of climate change extend beyond housing and heat stress. In April 21, we heard from senior staff specialists at Alice Springs Hospital and ANU researchers publishing research in the Lancet review that 34% of doctors are considering leaving the Territory because of the effects of climate change. We know how much stress our health system is under. Imagine if this happened, the massive gap that it would leave in our healthcare system. Every part of the Northern Territory suffers from health worker shortages, whether it's hospitals, NDIS services, remote clinics, or dentists. We cannot afford to lose more health workers. We cannot afford to lose workers in any sector. In fact, what we want to be doing is building our economy, building our workforce, and building our population. And if the NT becomes unlivable, it will also become unvisitable. Our tourism season, already confined to the cooler months, will shrink further. Our private tourism sector will suffer, jobs will be lost, businesses will be shut down, and our broader economy will be hit hard. Madam Speaker, I ask my fellow members, do you want to live in a territory like this? Because I certainly don't. And we have an opportunity to prevent that happening by transitioning to renewable energy, by reducing emissions, and by building a resilient, affordable energy system that can meet our needs in a warming world. What's frustrating, Madam Speaker, is that we're not without options. In fact, we're in an extraordinarily strong position if we choose to use it. The Northern Territory is one of the sunniest regions in the country. Tennant Creek is the sunniest place in Oceania with 297 sunny days a year. Alice Springs is fourth with 291 sunny days a year. Darwin is seventh with 250 days. We have enormous potential for solar generation, backed by storage and smart grid technologies. We could, with the right policy settings, not only meet our own needs cleanly and affordably, but potentially export clean power, expertise and innovation to other parts of the country and to other parts of the world. And we also know that we've got an environment that people travel from across the world to see. Tourists come for our wildlife, our wetlands, our rivers and our seas. But climate change is already threatening those ecosystems. And if we don't act now, we will not just be dealing with lost biodiversity, but with lost jobs, lost revenue, and we will have lost our home to live. We know that the Territory's economy is small and exposed. We can't afford to bet on a gas-led recovery while ignoring the global shift toward renewable energy. Other jurisdictions are investing in renewables not out of ideology, but out of basic economic self-interest. We should be doing the same. Renewables are already the cheapest form of energy on the market, and they're only going to get cheaper. We do not want to end up as the only buyer left for gas, paying through the nose because demand has plummeted and gas companies are stuck trying to offload gas to a handful of buyers. The world is moving away from gas for climate reasons and for economic reasons, and it's time for us to do the same. Any energy plan that does not include renewables is a plan that locks Territorians into higher energy prices and catastrophic climate consequences. The answer is not evading us, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The answer is renewables. Everyone outside this chamber knows that, and it's time for the government to catch up. So my message to the government is this: if these bills are about setting the foundations for a modern electricity market, then let's make sure that the foundations support the kind of future we actually need. That means including minimum renewable energy targets in the RESIP. We need clear, measurable commitments to growing renewable energy generation as part of the Territory's energy mix. Requiring genuine community consultation, not just industry consultation, on the RESIP before it's finalised. The people who will live with these decisions deserve a say in them. And ensuring that the Planning and Investment Review Panel includes representation from community, from consumer and from environmental stakeholders, not just government and market players. Mr. Deputy Speaker, these aren't radical demands, they're sensible improvements that would turn good technical legislation into genuinely transformative policy. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I said, these bills aren't bad, but they could be so much better. They give us a structure for planning, but now, as I said, we need the vision for what we're planning towards. The question before us isn't about market efficiency or regulatory frameworks, it's about what kind of territory we want to build and whether we're willing to make the choices now that will give our children and grandchildren a livable future. We have the sun, we have the land, we have the technology, and we have the economic imperative, and we have the moral responsibility. What we need now is the political will to put renewable energy at the centre of this reform. Not as an afterthought, not as something that we'll get to eventually, but as a core, explicit, non-negotiable part of our energy future. This is an opportunity for us here in this chamber. Let's not waste it. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you.